Let's quickly do the refuge prayer and we'll meditate after that. Oh, the refuge and the mandala. We'll try to meditate a little bit after, okay, to get the motivation. So put the refuge prayer up. I can read it in English. Everybody. Okay, so let's try and visualize the Buddha, historical Buddha in front of us. Body shining like a pile of gold, wearing the saffron robes, left hand in his lap holding the alms bowl. So symbolizing he's always in equipoise, meditating on emptiness. Right hand over the right knee. He subdued all the Mara's obstacles, completely overcome all difficulties. And he's seated on a moon, we call a moon cushion, so white, a pure white disc. And under that there's a sun cushion, a pure golden disc. So the moon cushion representing bodhicitta, conventional bodhicitta, and the golden disc, ultimate bodhicitta, which is the mind of wisdom realizing emptiness conjoined bodhicitta. And under those is the lotus, symbolizing his mind of definite emergence, renunciation. So in this being, so get the presence of this being in front of you. And for those who have taken the teacher, have made that connection, that engagement with a living teacher, this is in one essence with your teacher. And thinking of the kindness of this teacher, of the Buddha, to teach the Four Noble Truths, to show us a way out of all our difficulties in samsara. And take the purpose of our life is not just to free ourselves, but to free all sentient beings. So let's try and visualize all the sentient beings around us. Your mother and all your female relatives to the left of you, your father and all your male relatives to the right of you, all your friends behind you, the difficult people in front of you, and then all living beings. How wonderful if I can free them all from contaminated suffering. May they be all be able to go to full, complete enlightenment without even the traces of any afflictions. To be able to do that, to lead them myself, I need to become a fully realized, enlightened Buddha, having a pure mind with all the realizations. So I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly, by the merits we create through listening to teachings, discussing, etc. This is the Dharma. May I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening and discussing the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all living beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits we create through listening and discussing the Dharma, may we become Buddhas in order to benefit all sentient beings. Now we'll offer the mandala to the Buddha to please guide us and be with us during this whole discourse. This ground anointed with perfumes, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. Yidam Guru Aradna Mandalakam Niryataya. Okay, so now place your mindfulness back onto the Buddha in front of you. So gently gazing down at you, smiling, happy with our efforts, our intentions to now discuss and reflect on the Dharma. And then put your mindfulness on your body itself. Go from head to toe, keep completely relaxed. For those of who you know how to do the scanning of the body, go through the scanning from head to toe, across the face, down the neck, shoulders, the back. Down into the hips and legs. Really ground yourself, body in contact with the floor or the chair. Go right down to the feet, completely relaxed into the feet. Then bring the awareness back up from the feet, legs, hips, coming up the front of the body, into the lower abdomen, becoming aware of your breathing process, see how it affects your whole body. So especially here, the abdomen, feel the rising of the abdomen with each in-breath. And as you breathe out, the abdomen lowers down again, flattens. And see how the breathing affects the upper, the chest. And now put the awareness across the shoulders and go down the arms into the hands. Keeping your right hand resting on your left, the thumbs are touching at the level of the navel. And again, rest your hands, or rest your awareness in the hands. Really try to become aware of every different sensation. And then coming back up from the hands, up the arms, shoulders, the back of the neck, back of the head, and the top of the head. And then hold your awareness on the whole body, head to toe. And keeping the awareness of the body, become aware of having taken the body, or we're in the nature of suffering, subject to pain. Because of having taken this contaminated body, it's disintegrating every second. It's a compounded phenomena. can see how it's prone to sicknesses, pain, all kinds of undesirable sensations. And eventually we have to leave it behind. And we take other forms, and again they're contaminated, compounded, disintegrating in the nature of suffering. So even in the higher realms, the God realms, there's beautiful forms. Our body has been made of light, but eventually our karma finishes, and then we have to experience also suffering of change there. And we leave those bodies behind. So right now in this body, we see, by reflecting on this, the impurities of it, how by nature it's kind of leaking undesirable things. We understand true suffering. By thinking of taking other rebirths in other realms, they're all contaminated. We understand all pervasive suffering. And we put our minds to reflect on others around us, our parents, our family, relatives. We're all in the nature same, because having taken contaminated aggregates, the nature of true suffering. Then we look at our feelings, especially our craving, our attachment for the sense pleasures, wanting only things which are pleasant and pleasure. Again, they're contaminated pleasure, and they always let us down. And there's a craving to be parted from the undesirable, unpleasant sensations, the sights, sounds, smells, tastes. We try to identify this mind of craving as one of our poisons, and due to that we'll create all kinds of negative karma. So we understand true origins, how we got into this big mess of samsara. And then we look at the mind itself, this continuity of mind, this ever-flowing river of moments of mind. We also see how this mind is empty of any kind of inherent nature. So due to that, we can actually improve the mind, we can train our mind using all the virtuous mental factors. And so this thing called liberation from samsara, enlightenment, actually exists and is possible for us to achieve. So we understand true cessations, the stopping of all our afflictions. What stops these afflictions? So look at true paths, all the antidotes the Buddha taught us. So all the conventional antidotes, and then finally the wisdom that realizes selflessness of persons and phenomena, the ultimate antidote. With that, all the afflictions have no power. So meditating like this on the body, feelings, mind, and phenomena, understand enlightenment is possible for us. We can do it. The Buddha showed us how it's done by his example. Just like us now, by observing the sentient beings around us who are suffering just like us, we generate that compassion. We wish to help them, wish to free them from suffering. In the same way, Buddha then strengthened that mind until it became limitless. And seeing how the need to really free them from every suffering, he then engaged in meditating on the wisdom realizing selflessness. So through lifetimes, he improved his mind of bodhicitta and that wisdom, and completely cut through every level of affliction, including all the stains of those afflictions, and achieved the omniscient mind, which we call the Dharmakaya. So that's the same for us, observing the sentient beings around us, seeing how they're all in the nature of suffering. To really help them, we need to become an enlightened being ourselves. To do that, we need to generate bodhicitta and that wisdom realizing selflessness. Okay, so with that, we'll start the discussion or teaching aspect first, I guess. Okay, so let's have a little bit of a recap of what we've gone through of the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. So they have these, I'm not sure what it is in Pali or Sanskrit, but we have these, you see, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha have their names, you see, in the Tibetan, so Sangye, Buddha. Dharma is normally called a Chu, so your Sangye, Chu, Dang. So Sangye is Buddha, Chu is Dharma, Dang means and, so Sangye, Chu, Dang. Sok. Sok is like, I would say collection, I guess. So normally it's like the Sangha. So that's called, in Tibetan it's actually Gendun, which is my name, Gendun. So it comes from Gewa, which means virtue, and Dumpa. Dumpa is aspiring to virtue. So those aspiring to virtue is normally called the Sangha. Of course, so it's normally the monks and nuns, but it's all Buddhists basically going towards virtue, right? So it's a Sangha. So Sangye, Sang is the aspect of being completely purified. Gye is in terms of being completely vast, having all realizations, accumulated all the merit needed to be an enlightened being. So Sangye. So Chu is like a meaning of to hold. So this, I guess, is more the aspect of holding you back, especially in the first level of refuge, holding you back from the lower realms. Yeah. So what's the first aspect of refuge is, fear of the difficult rebirths we can go into, what we call the miserable lower rebirths. So in the faith of the Buddha's teachings, by engaging in those teachings, it'll stop us from going there. So that's the kind of first fear we have. Remember the three kind of levels of refuge. So the churs are holding us back from the lower realms. It blocks us from going to lower realms. How? By engaging in the 10 virtuous actions, by abstaining ourselves from refraining from the 10 non-virtuous actions. That actually takes us towards virtue, takes us away from the lower realms. Yeah, because what's the causes of the lower realms? The 10 non-virtuous actions. Yeah, that's it. But then chur can also be, there's the other two levels of refuge where you're not just kind of scared of going to lower realms. Then the mind gets a bit more vast. Things, okay, I may go to lower, maybe free from lower realms. I could create the cause to go to higher realms, a human again, and maybe a god perhaps. But then even those, they finish eventually. Eventually they all finish, right? So then there's a mind of definitely want to emerge from all these rebirths, wherever they are, because you see them all, even the good states, as being in the nature of change and suffering, right? So that mind definitely emerging. So it could be a fear, see the chur can be a fear holding you back from ever going back into samsara. So the mind is now wishing to emerge from samsara. So that wishing to emerge, you're going towards liberation. So as we discussed before, we call it the lower liberation, lower nirvana, which is your self-liberation, your own. You're no longer under the power of karma and afflictions, and you can no longer take rebirth in samsara. You're free. Yeah. Then the third kind of higher type of refuge is the Mahayana aspect. So you're not just scared of, of your own rebirth in samsara. It's you thinking of all sentient beings. How wonderful if they were all free of samsara. Not just yourself. All beings. They're in the same position. So that wish to really free all beings. So your refuge is more like, may I become a Buddha to enlighten every being. So it was more, I guess, it's my Mickey Mouse mind. A chur is like a fear, holding you back from the lower liberation. Because yes, it's a good goal to go towards, but you see the drawbacks of that. Because in the lower nirvana, you don't have the same type of powerful mind to help all sentient beings, right? So then you kind of, although you see nirvana, lower nirvana, the individual liberation as a perfectly pure goal, you see its limitations, and you hold yourself back. You hold back from that, and you go towards a full enlightened state, what we call the Mahayana Arahant, the completely enlightened Buddha, right? So that's a Sangha, Chu, and Sok. So when you say the Sangha, Chu, and Soki, Chunama, that's Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. So think of that. Of course, they're Tibetan. Sometimes you're going to recite in Tibetan, but put your mind to see exactly what those are. So we try to identify the Buddha, of course, the historical Buddha that came. So in the Pali tradition, it's seen as a bodhisattva who trained many, many, many lifetimes, and at that last life as Prince Siddhartha came as a prince, left the palace, the 6 years of austerities, enlightenment, and then after death, leaving the body, and the mind also finishing. That's kind of the Pali tradition view of the Buddha. So the Mahayana is a slightly different aspect of the historical Buddha coming from and actually another enlightened state. He was already enlightened, but it's all a manifestation for us to show us a way that is possible for us, right? And there's this tantric view also that it's just like all the emanations of Buddhas are coming from what we call the transcendental wisdom of Dharmakaya. This ocean of wisdom minds, and they're manifesting out from that to help us at different times, depending on our karma, or to meet them. Then they'll come as historical Buddhas. But between what we call the wheel turning Buddhas, there are many beings who are becoming enlightened, of course, as they follow the path. Even now, there's many beings becoming enlightened. So when we take refuge in the Buddha, we take refuge in, of course, the historical Buddha, because that's the connection we have with at this time, but all the Buddhas that have existed and will exist. So in fact, we take refuge in the enlightened state of mind, the resultant refuge, or the causal refuge, the ones who already become enlightened, and the resultant refuge, we want to become like that, to benefit all sentient beings. So by first by taking historical Buddha, looking at his form, the form body, also coming through many collections of virtue, of merit, many past lives, in the whole physical form, the beautiful form we see came from all the merit he accumulated, and the qualities of his speech. That even just one word could answer many questions that people had just by his power of clairvoyance and knowing what's needed by beings. He could do that. And he also, the power of the mind, he could see all the different capacities and capabilities of different disciples. That's why he taught different paths, like the individual liberation path. He taught that because he knew that's where those beings were able to go to at that time. But knowing that there's another final goal, actually, because he said those beings are not ready for that. So there's kind of a stepping stone. It's the same way what we call the whole Lam Rim is like a gradual process, because some beings are not ready for different levels of the path. So you have to go very gently. That's what we have, in fact, the small scope, medium scope, great scope. Yeah? And also, you could look at the three refuges, where they came from. Yeah, one was just a fear of just going to lower realms. That fear was enough to take refuge in the Buddha, and then practicing refraining from the 10 non-virtues and practicing all the virtues, the 10 virtues, you actually become free of lower rebirths. And that's where some beings are. Some beings see all of samsara as a nature of suffering, and they want to go to definitely emerge from that. So some beings have a greater scope of mind. And the Mahayana scope is mind, thinking all beings are in the nature of suffering. I want to free them all. And taking on that personal responsibility, which is a huge mind, it's way beyond our thinking now, but of course it's possible. Why? Because a mind can be changed, mind can be trained. We know that from our own experience. A mind can slowly change its habits, patterns, and be strengthened. And that's that way. But again, so the Buddha taught all these different ways for different beings. So you see the power of his mind. Then of course the enlightened activities he performed many different, like even now we're going through these 15 days of miracles. So at the time Buddha was alive, he very rarely showed these we call these miraculous aspects, but he did it at this time, in those 15 days, to bring forth many disciples who were doubting who this being was. Okay, so then they generated faith in the Buddha, and they practiced the Dharma as we know in the Four Noble Truths, and then they became liberated themselves. So then we talked about the Dharma, which is at the actual refuge. We will call it the actual refuge because even the Buddha, we can have a lot of faith in the Buddha and do lots of prayers, but he himself doesn't have the power to change our minds, to free our minds from all the afflictions. And he showed us what the afflictions were. Like we talked a little bit about the root afflictions, and he showed us what the antidotes are. Right. So we look at the what we call the four close placements of mindfulness. We did a little bit just now in the meditation. So that's what it's talking about. It's talking about reflecting on the being mindful of phenomena. It's reflecting on the what we call the discordant class, so all the afflictions. So we have to know what they are, of course. We have to identify them, right? And then we have to know what the antidotes for each of them are. Then we have to put effort into practicing it, which means to put these antidotes into our minds. It's not like we pray and pray and pray and the Buddha enlightens our mind. We have to do the work ourselves, right? He gave us inspiration by showing us the example. Then he showed us what he took, kind of the medicine he took himself. Then we have to do the work. That's our real refuge. Those antidotes become our refuge. So again, it's not like, okay, now I read the books, I did the teaching, I did I don't know, whatever you could say I've done. discovering Buddhism module, I've done the basic program, I've done master's program, I've done this. That's fine, but unless you put all that stuff into your mind, it doesn't work, right? You can have all this stuff in your head like a computer. You can list all these different things, but you really have to put them into the mind. I mean, including myself, of course, I had to put them into. That's when the antidotes start to work. That's when we get protection, right? So I talked a bit about the Dharma refuge. So I like to reflect a little bit more about the Dharma in terms of what we call the Eightfold Path. Yeah, so some of you have heard about the Eightfold Path. So I want to give you a little bit of So in this tradition, when we see the Eightfold Path, the Pali tradition has its own kind of view, which is shared with us, but in terms of aspects, it can be a little bit different. So here, it's kind of going towards, there's a correct view. So that's the view on emptiness. Yeah, the specific view on emptiness is called the Prasangika view. So this particular view, held by Nagarjuna, all the Indian masters from the Nalanda Monastery in India, and if you listen to his Holiness, it's always quoting them. He's always saying there is no such thing as kind of Tibetan Buddhism. It's something, of course, it's a label we put on what? We put it onto the tradition that came from Nalanda Monastery in India, that came from the great saints like Nagarjuna, Aryadeva, Asanga, all these great saints. Yeah, that's what came into Tibet, and that's what we call Tibet Buddhism. It's not some sort of another new tradition. It's just the same thing that came from India. That's why it's always so you always see him putting his hand together to the Indian masters, because he's following these Indian teachers, right? So their view on emptiness was what was called the Prasangika view. This view is essential if you want to leave samsara and achieve enlightenment, because this is the view which cuts through all misconceptions of how the self exists. Due to this, all the afflictions come. Due to all the afflictions coming and following them and giving power into them, we act inappropriately, create negative karma, and then we get ourselves into this huge mess called samsara, right? Which means we take these aggregates again and again, right? So we look into that, yeah. So so that's the correct view. So we try and bring that view. Of course, at the moment we don't have it. We have to study it. We have to understand a little bit more how it works. How this view, what we call the transitory collection or ignorance. For us, it's the same thing. Ignorance, no view of the transitory collection, is a misconception of the I and holding that to be true. Yeah, that's the one that's been tripping us up all this life, and due to that, we've been going through so much suffering, so many, the uncountable different sufferings we can think of when we think of the human realms. All different realms come due to that. Then there's a correct thought. Yeah, that's more an intention. Having understood that view, yeah. So of course, Mickey Mouse minds, our Mickey Mouse levels, a little bit intellectually understand that view. And we can also meditate on that, just conceptually meditate on it. We have a little taste of how that self doesn't actually exist the way we think it exists. Then we come out from that meditation. We don't believe in it as we used to believe in it so strongly. Yeah. Then the intention, the corrected thought, is to then try and tell others about it. Yeah, to kind of, with the intention to help others. Of course, depending on where they are, some people don't want to hear about it, but so if they want to hear about it, you try and explain as much as you've understood, because that's what's really going to cut the afflictions. Okay. So it's correct view, correct thought, then correct speech. So this is more like what we normally understand. We try and now speak honestly, speak kindly, speak truthfully. We speak with words to unite people, to bring people together instead of dividing people. Yeah, and we speak things which are meaningful. So we actually try to avoid the four non-virtues of speech: the lying, harsh speech, divisive speech, and idle gossip. So that's correct speech. Then correct actions. This is more mind of ethics. So it's going towards abandoning the three activities of body: the killing, stealing, sexual misconduct. Yeah, so correct actions. Again, by reflecting on karma, thinking of the consequences of acting on that. So the stronger the belief in karma, the stronger we have the mind of restraint. Then correct livelihood. This is again a mind of ethics that wants to refrain from non-virtues. Again, now here it's of the body and speech. See here one adopts ways of living which don't draw you into attachment, because a lot of the time our livelihood is a little bit about attachment. It's mixed with attachment, especially when we want to gain things for ourselves. We do things through hinting, through flattery, through pretension, all these kind of things. So we have to kind of, like, yeah, I mean, especially for the Sangha, it can be quite dangerous when we want things, because we're not supposed to have a lot of things. Okay, so because that stuff you gave me last year was really really helpful, and I finished it quite quickly. So in a way, you're kind of saying to the sponsor, well, I wouldn't mind having some more of that. So that's the kind of stuff you have to get away from. So also for as lay people, even your work ethics, you have to be careful. You don't get I don't know, maybe some of you in the comments or something, you flatter the person, say, oh, what a wonderful hairstyle you've got. So of course the person immediately likes your nice words, and then they might buy something from they might buy more than they were thinking of buying. So this kind of thing happens. Yeah? So be careful with that. That's correct livelihood. Okay. Then correct effort. So now this is a joy in actually putting your mind into the antidotes. Instead of thinking, oh gosh, I have to practice patience with that person again. No, it's a fantastic now. Another moment to practice patience. Wonderful. I'm going to do, that kind of thing. Yeah. Okay, so correct view, correct thought, correct speech, correct actions, correct livelihood, correct effort, and now there's correct mindfulness. So this is this is not like the mindfulness we're normally hearing about, but of course it includes it. It's a mind. What are you going to fill it with? You're going to fill it with the antidotes. You're trying to not forget the antidotes. So these are all the things we heard in the Dharma, all the different what we call the conventional antidotes, like for anger, there's loving kindness and patience. For attachment, there's impermanence, there's pride, there's humility. Kind of thinking about what we don't know, instead of kind of thinking, oh, I know everything about this and this and this, and so think, well, I don't know so much about that. It brings us down. So thinking of the different antidotes and not forgetting them. So trying to remember to put them as soon as the hints of the afflictions are coming up. Because sometimes when they're full blown, these afflictions, it's too late to put the antidote in, because it's kind of they take you over completely. So try and watch, so it's kind of there's kind of a little bit of introspection. You're watching which afflictions are coming up, and then putting the antidote. So putting filling your mind with the antidote. It's mindfulness. Yeah. And then that's of course, when you look at Shantideva's text, he's using mindfulness a lot, but on specific Lamrim topics. Like for example, how to not engage in non-virtues. By thinking of the consequences of what happens if you do one of those non-virtues with all the full four factors that project you into another rebirth. You get scared. That's good. That's good fear, because it's going to stop you from going into a lower realms. You need that fear, actually. Yeah? So you're mindful of the consequences of a lower rebirth, and you actually, so that's why sometimes some of the meditations you do, when you go in the lower realms, you become that being. Imagine a snout coming out, your hands become paws, you've got a tail wagging at the back of you, and you're just full of attachment. Like when you see a dog, you put something in front, it's food, it's completely mesmerized. That's you. You don't want to be there, right? Because you create even more non-virtuous as you are that being. Yeah? So you just get scared. You bring that meditation you had, that feeling, into your mind. okay, if that's what's going to happen if I engage in non-logic, I better abstain. So refrains you, you restrain. And we're doing it all the time in this life because we're scared of things that are going to happen to our life here. You know, we buy all these things for our teeth, all the floss, we go to the dentist, and he says you buy this kind of toothpaste, buy this kind of brush, you know, all this. So you, because you don't want to have all this trouble coming up when you're older, you're so scared of that, you're mindful of every night brushing your teeth and everything, you know, and all the other diets we take because of the consequence of not following a proper diet, you know, and the effects it might have in a few years' time. Restraint of eating a certain food, we engage in doing a certain activity or exercise because we're scared, right? Of things that might happen in this life we don't want to happen. So in the same way, we fill our minds with things that might happen in our future lives. So that's going really towards Dharma practice. Yeah? We're thinking of beyond this life. Okay, so correct mindfulness. And then there's a correct concentration. So that's more talking about meditation, meditative stabilization. Okay, so that's a normal concentration we talk about, kind of Shine, going through all the 9 steps into Shine and using that mind. Yeah, now just not using it just for like being calm and peaceful, using that mindfulness, that concentration, and combining it with the view. Number one, correct view. Yeah, because a lot of time we may have a little bit of understanding of emptiness, of how there's no intrinsic self, there's no kind of intrinsic aggregates here around, you know, the 5 aggregates we talked about. There's also the phenomena around us and exist kind of from their own side in any findable nature. We have it for a glimpse of it, we can't hold it because we don't have concentration. Yeah, so this concentration we talk about is in the Buddhist context is used with the correct view. Right? It helps us. So this, you know, it's shared. Yeah, these 8 noble, how do you say, 8 noble path, what we call these things, are shared by the Theravada, Pali tradition, and the Mahayana vehicle. But the Mahayana vehicle is combined now with bodhicitta, right? So you know, we call it the 3 higher trainings. The training, higher training in ethics, higher training in concentration, higher training in wisdom. So why is it called higher? Because it's a mind that's conjoined with renunciation. It's not just ethics, it's not just concentration, or not just wisdom. Because see, many traditions are following proper ethics and concentration, you know, but it's not higher, because higher is now in terms of the Buddhist context, renunciation. Here's again this renunciation we have to adapt into a word of definitely wanting to emerge from all of psychic existence. So even what we call the form and formless realms, which are incredibly long years absorbed in meditation, you know, and they're incredibly peaceful states, but we see them all and they're for suffering because they change, and we actually have to one day drop back down. So some of the other traditions may think of that as being an ultimate goal to achieve, like a complete liberation. So Buddha could see, you know, from his meditation, that wasn't it. Although it was many, many years and lifetimes of being there, it's not the end. It's not the end of samsara. Yeah. So we have to clearly identify, like in the Four Noble Truths, you know, what is the true suffering? All pervasive suffering. All pervasive means every different realm is pervaded by suffering, right? What's true origins? Karma and afflictions, especially the view of the transitory I and the craving. The craving, detachment, is the one that actually nourishes all our karmic imprints, that pushes us into rebirths. Yeah, but again, that craving comes from the view of the transitory collection. Then what's the true cessation? It's a complete stopping of all those afflictions. Yeah, but it begins, you know, you can have a true cessation on what we call the Arya path, when you see for the first time emptiness directly, emptiness of self and phenomena, when you see it directly, a non-conceptual state. That's what we call a true cessation, because that's when you're actually stopping the the afflictions by the root. The seeds are being cut. You see, so that's some other traditions may think, well, you know, meditation, like an absorption, a meditative state, there's no afflictions coming up. And it's true, they're not coming up, they're dormant, yeah, but they're not being cut. You see, that's what the Buddha said. Even those states of what we call the higher realms of meditation, although it looks very, very peaceful, looks like a nirvana, it's not nirvana because it's reversible. You can actually come back from them. So that's why his state of true cessation is what the beginning of not coming back. Yeah, once that true cessation starts on the Arya path, the seeds are being cut. They can never give rise to a result. Yeah, that's the benefits of true cessation. They can never come back in a way to give us trouble anymore. So that's what gives us peace. You see, right? What does that? It's a true path. What's a true path? That specifically that wisdom realizing emptiness. Yeah, so that's what we really focus on. Yeah, of course, there's all the other afflictions, but due to the view of the transitory collection, the view of due to the view of emptiness, properly seeing emptiness, all the other afflictions aren't given power because the afflictions are coming due to that view of the transitory collection. Yeah, so there's no more. It's like the roots of a tree. As the roots have been cut, there's no more space for the tree to grow properly. Right? So we focus on that. So that's why in the kind of the eightfold path, the correct view is given as that, and that's the main one we focus on. Okay. So then the three higher trainings. Okay. So it can be we call it higher training in ethics, higher training in concentration, higher training in wisdom. So higher training in ethics is composed of from the 8 correct speech, correct aims of actions, and correct livelihood. Yeah. So due to that, our kind of gross afflictions are kind of subdued a little bit. By subduing those gross afflictions, we have less distraction and we can more easily meditate on concentration to achieve Shine. So for correct or higher concentration, is correct mindfulness. Yeah. So putting the right antidotes. Of course, here mindfulness is more like putting the mindfulness on your specific object you've chosen for achieving calm abiding or concentration. Could be the Buddha image, could be the breath, could be the mind itself. So depending on what you've chosen, correct mindfulness, not forgetting the main object of your concentration. And then with that comes the correct meditative stabilization. Yeah? So for high concentration, there's correct mindfulness and correct meditative stabilization. Then for higher wisdom, there's correct view, first one, so emptiness, view of emptiness, correct thought, and correct effort. So here, correct thought, remember, it's more like the intention now having come out or understand the view of emptiness, the intention to guide people with what you've understood on the correct view. And the correct effort here is more like now putting joy into that specific application of the wisdom realizing emptiness. That's your. So again, for of course the three higher trainings are kind of what we've seen as the recipe for individual liberation for one's own peace, but we also train it. Bodhisattva was also training it. It's not something that's for them. We got something else to do. No, it's shared by us, and we actually engage in that as well, but with bodhicitta. Okay, so that's our path. So we engage in the 6 perfections. We engage in what's called the 4 ways of gathering disciples. So even of course, it's not just for Sangha members or teachers. The 4 ways of gathering disciples are also for everybody to practice. Any bodhisattvas are trying to benefit beings. You benefit beings by how? First, giving them gifts. Because everybody loves gifts, right? So you give them something, and the people are like, oh, so is the person so nice? Yeah, they see us. Then you attract them slowly, yeah? Then you have kind words. Everyone loves kind words. You speak kindly to them, very gentle. And then the third one is actually try to give them Dharma. Yeah? So then again, it's not like Dharma sitting here, giving all this stuff. Just gently encourage people into practicing ethics, patience, generosity. If you're going to, I don't know, if you're going to give blood, for example, you can tell people about not with look at me, I'm going to give my blood. I'm going to give blood. Say, well, would you like to come? So kind of make so that person wasn't thinking about it, but then by you inspiring them, they think, oh, okay, I might go as well, So that kind of thing, and then I tried to give blood here actually in France, but they didn't accept me. because at the time, I don't know, maybe in the 80s, I think, there was this mad cow disease. And I was living in UK at that time. So because of that, they said, sorry, no, thank you very much, but so I can't give blood here. So, or, things like this. And somebody is going through a difficult time, you encourage them into practicing patience by, showing methods that have worked for you, and maybe also being an example yourself. So that's the fourth way, is you actually live by the way you're guiding people. So so you collect disciples that way. So again, it's not like disciples like your fan club. You're just like, people are attracted to you, how you are, your comportment, and they want to be like you. So they get, into Dharma. And then with that comes the six perfections, right? So that's the Bodhisattva path. That's our Dharma, right? So we engage in bodhicitta, yeah, and the six perfections. So that holds us back. The Bodhisattva practitioner holds us back. The Cho holds us back from going into our own individual peace, thinking of our own liberation. Yeah, so like that. Okay, so then going from there, let's have a look at what the Sangha is. So Sangha. So actually, I think it's in Geshe Sopa's commentary. I heard the Sangha in the Sanskrit or Pali is talking about getting close. Sangha, it's like getting close to. So they're talking about, in this particular context, getting close to the view realizing emptiness. Yeah, the Sangha. So why? Because normally it's the Sangha, the monks and nuns who are practicing in ethics, concentration, and wisdom, and because of their, I guess maybe the intensity of the practice, they're getting closer to realizing emptiness directly. Yeah. So in the Tibetan, it's a little bit different. It's called Gewa, Gendun. Gendun's my name. So Gewa. So I guess it's similar. Gewa could be the highest virtue of emptiness, and Dumpa is aspiring towards that, aspiring towards virtue. So Sangha, is normally, of course, and like most groups now are talking about Sangha as being just people who are Buddhist who are practicing in your path. That's, of course, a normal view of Sangha, because it's like, if you remember how the Buddha Dharma Sangha can be seen as the Buddha has been a doctor, the Dharma has been the medicine, the Sangha has been the helpers. The helpers, of course, are people around you who also practice in the same way as you. You're in the same thinking, because it's kind of, remember, when you become Buddhist, you're actually taking a big leap into the wilderness, because you're stepping away from worldly views of this life, materialism, thinking of oneself, all that kind of stuff. You're trying to leave behind that. You say, well, and so thinking of future lives, thinking the mind goes on, thinking liberation in life and exist. So you need people who think the same way, otherwise you're going to be in trouble. You have dinner with people who don't believe in that stuff. You get a little bit disoriented every day. People think, well, the rubbish. Why are you sitting there meditating? It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. You're like playing with rabbits for a horn. You're imagining stuff. It doesn't exist. So you might, in the end, think, well, yeah, they could be right, because it's hard to prove. The Buddha exists. It's hard to prove that these reincarnation things exist. So you have to read, like to read all the, I say, Doctor Professor Ian Stevenson. He made all these case studies of reincarnation, not only in the East, because some people think, oh, it's just an Eastern thing, all over the world. Many kids who can remember. You think, well, and then of course we use the normal logical proofs of where does mind come from. Remember, we talked about that before, because for us in Buddhism, every produced phenomena has its own main cause, what we call the substantial cause, has to be in its own nature. It can't be of a different nature. So if we agree the mind is not matter, if we first have to establish that mind is not matter, where does it come from? Because the body, your brain, doesn't produce something which is not matter, right? So we trace it back to this, this life, into the womb, and therefore past lives. So if there's past lives, there's future lives. Then the mind can be transformed. It's not like one. I may be born as maybe, I don't know, Italian, therefore I'm very angry. That's my nature. Sorry, it doesn't work that way for us. Yes, Italians may have a more hot-tempered nature because maybe the society around them are thinking it's okay to be angry. So you kind of let go. Where the British don't, they kind of reserve, they hold it in. That doesn't mean they're not angry, but they don't show it. Right? That kind of thing. So society also determines how we behave a little bit. So the mind has its own, it's changing every second. It's empty of inherent existence, which means all these afflictions can be removed. Yeah. Remember, it's like the water and the dirt. And when you have a muddy glass of water, the mud isn't one nature with the water. The mud will settle down. The water is clear. Same way the mind. Just because we have afflictions doesn't mean they are our mind. They can be got rid of by what? By all the different antidotes. So of course, when you become Buddhist, when you start to believe in those things, you need people who encourage and support you with those thoughts, because it's a bit difficult if you don't have that, right? So that's our Sangha. So you can be on your study group people, but of course it can be also the monks and nuns who now taken it one step further. They're taken a kind of engagement in certain vows. Of course, some of the lay people have also taken the 5 lay vows, but they've gone a little bit further. So normally they kind of call the conventional Sangha, even the monks and nuns. But actually, the real Sangha jewel, is the ones who actually realize for the first time, directly, non-conceptually, emptiness. They become a real valid person to trust in. Not like me or Mickey Mouse, Sangha like me, because I don't have any of those things. They become, because that's a person who's got a valid mind of emptiness. That's amazing. That's just mind blowing, right? So that person, of course, from that, if you, bodhisattva or non-bodhisattva, because you can have an Arya who's also on the individual path who realize emptiness directly. That's amazing. So these beings are really what we call the Sangha jewel. So anybody who has a monk, nun, layperson, dog, cat, I think if you know that very part, it's amazing. That is the being who has, what we call a Sangha jewel. And then, because of the true path being the wisdom realizing emptiness directly, it brings about what arises is a true cessation, a cutting of the seeds of the afflictions for the first time. And then, as that wisdom is increased, through the meditation, and then through accumulating virtue, and then going back into meditation, accumulating virtue, going back into meditation, and then you cut more and more of the seeds. Like that. So, as we described before, the individual practitioner, Arya being, they're going for their own liberation. They go into this meditation, the same emptiness that we're talking about, the bodhisattvas are trying to realize, right? But they don't have what we call the bodhicitta mind, so which gives that wisdom extra strength, intensity, right? So the individual practitioner goes through his meditations, goes through all the paths, gets rid of all the seeds eventually, and achieves what we call his own liberation in that life. He'll be called an arahat. Yeah. The bodhisattva, he engages in that with bodhicitta. Because that bodhicitta gives us extra strength into that wisdom, same way, goes to meditations, out of meditation, sees everything as an illusion, but engages in all the 6 perfections, goes back into meditation, and strengthens that wisdom due to all the merits of the 6 perfections, 5 perfections, and he goes back into meditation, cuts through all the seeds. So of course it could take lifetimes, right? But then what happens is, because of the intensity of the wisdom due to bodhicitta, he cuts through not just the seeds, but also the subtle, what we call the subtle latencies, the imprints of those afflictions. And that's what blocks the individual practitioner from becoming a complete enlightened being, which having all those powers of incredible clairvoyance, incredible capacity to achieve what we call the 4 kayas, right? The Dharmakaya, or we call it 3 kayas or 2 kayas, because the Dharmakaya has 2 aspects. One, is the omniscient mind, that wisdom realizing emptiness of the Buddha. And that mind is still, just like our mind, is also empty of inherent existence. We also call it a Dharmakaya. But this one we focus more on the wisdom. We call it the wisdom truth body. Yeah. From that, spontaneously, the other bodies are being achieved. Because why? Because the Bodhisattva is becoming an enlightened being, to help all sentient beings. If you rest in the Dharmakaya, you're just mind, and no one can perceive you. So then you manifest, you take a form, you take a different body, you see. So Dharmakaya then manifests as a Sambhogakaya. So that's only seen by other Arya Bodhisattvas, and also a Nirmanakaya. And Nirmanakaya has many aspects, including what we call the wheel-turning Buddhas, the supreme wheel-turning Buddhas, like the Buddha Shakyamuni. And also other emanations, manifestations can come as anything, basically, to help us. Because the whole goal is to bring us into virtue, to bring us into a state of liberation, enlightenment. And depends on our karma, or where we are. The Buddha has to manifest in that way to help us. So he will do that. He or she will do that. Whatever way is needed will come in front of us to benefit us. So that way. So those, that's the real Sangha jewel is that actually a being who has achieved that true cessation and true path. Okay. So then there is what we call a temporal refuge and ultimate refuge. So that's a little bit different from a conventional. I don't know what word to use, because Rinpoche Lama doesn't use the word jewel anymore. He doesn't like the word jewel. It's just a jewel is not so appropriate. It's just, all these years we've been using it, suddenly no, it's not. It has to be a sublime one. So he calls it 3 sublime ones, right? Sublime and rare, because they're rare. We don't always get to meet the Buddha's teachings like this. It's very rare to meet them. We think it's kind of okay, because the teachings on Zoom all over, there's centers all over the world, and there's the living practitioners all over the world. But it's very rare to have this time. There are times in the human kind of the world system, there's no Buddha, there's no teaching at all. It's called the dark area, right? Dark ages. So it's amazingly rare to have these what we call 3 sublime ones. So it's difficult to say a jewel, but I have to say, because it makes more sense here. So there's there's a difference between what we call a temporal refuge, ultimate refuge, and a kind of conventional jewel or conventional sublime one, and ultimate sublime one. So I don't know if Heather she's got her skills together, we've got something to share on the screen of what a temporal refuge, ultimate refuge. It's like a small printed box, a grey box. So you might get an understanding of what we mean by a kind of a temporal refuge. What becomes a temporal refuge? What becomes an ultimate refuge? So normally, ultimate refuge is actually when somebody has gone right to the end of the path. Yeah, that's the ultimate refuge. So that's what we call the Buddha. So Buddha is an ultimate refuge. Yeah, he's a Buddha. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, ultimate refuge. Yeah, so you see that. So the Buddha has gone to the very end. Yeah. So Buddha himself, the 2 bodies, the 2 form bodies, what we call the Nirmanakaya and the Sambhogakaya, their ultimate refuge. Yeah, you see, it says yes, and they're the actual refuge objects. So even the conventional Buddha jewel, what we call it, so Nirmanakaya, Sambhogakaya, they call the conventional Buddha sublime ones, but they're also the ultimate refuges. The ultimate Buddha jewel is actually the true truth bodies. So I just mentioned them. It's called the Dharmakaya. It has 2 aspects. One Dharmakaya is the wisdom truth body, which is the omniscient mind of the Buddha, and one Dharmakaya is called the emptiness of that mind. So both of these are also ultimate refuges. Yeah, that's what we really, go for. That's kind of what we call a causal refuge. Okay, for beings who achieve that, the beings who already have those outside ourselves, that's a causal refuge. What we want to achieve, that is a resultant refuge. Okay. So then we have the Dharma jewel. Because normally we think, oh, the Dharma, don't step on the text and then treat them with respect. And yes, that's right. Yeah. But that's conventional Dharma. Those texts, all the teachings he gave, Yeah, that's a conventional Dharma jewel. The real, I mean, you see, ultimate Dharma jewel is actually the true cessation, the true path. Yeah, because that's, Dharma is something that holds, it protects. That's what protects us, you see. What really protects us. Remember, the true cessation and true paths. What's a true path? Is that wisdom, realizing emptiness, directly, non-conceptually. That brings about a true cessation, a stopping, ceasing of the kind of levels of the afflictions and their seeds, not just seizing afflictions temporarily, because that we can do in many different ways. Like if you're really, really angry and you go out for a walk, maybe your anger will go down a bit, or you have a nice pizza, then because you forget your anger, you forget your object of anger, and you come at your object of attachment, or have a nice ice cream, then your anger has gone temporarily. The seeds there, right? It'll come back up. Once you get the condition to meet, it'll come back up. Right? So the cessation, ceasing of all the afflictions and their seeds, but again, not completely in one shot. Just because you've realized emptiness for the first time non-conceptually doesn't mean you're enlightened. That's the beginning of your path, the real path of enlightenment, right? So the seeds are being knocked out slowly. So that's the ultimate Dharma jewel, okay? Then, okay, so wait, let me go on to, so, but who has the ultimate Dharma jewel actually, is the ultimate refuge, see on the other end of the box, is a Buddha. Yeah, the true cessations and true paths in the Buddha's mind is the ultimate refuge. Why? Because we come back to another box later on. What we call ultimate refuge is that which has actually gone completely beyond all of samsara. Yeah, the ultimate true cessation, true paths are only in the Buddha's mind, but it begins on the Arya level. That's why you can have a conventional refuge, yeah, in the Aryas, those who have the beginning of the true cessation, true path. So then, who are the conventional Sangha jewel? Yeah, are Aryas. Yeah, those beings, the people who have the true cessation, true paths in their minds. Yeah, that is the conventional Sangha jewel. So that, as you see, so it becomes an actual jewel. Then a conventional refuge of the conventional Sangha jewel is those beings who have true cessation, true paths at the beginning. We call the path of seeing. They see directly emptiness, but the ultimate refuge, yeah, jewel or sublime one, is the Buddha. Yeah, because he has the true cessation, or he or she has true cessations, true paths in the ultimate way, which means they've gone completely beyond. Yeah, in the fullest capacity, they traverse the whole path. That's the ultimate refuge. So that's why sometimes in the prayer we say, the Guru is a Buddha, the Guru is a Dharma, the Guru is a Sangha also. Yeah, but you would say Guru, but remember that, because in the Mahayana context, the Guru, yeah, we can of course talk about the conventional teacher that you met, but that being comes from the absolute Guru, the Dharmakaya of all the wisdom realizing emptiness of all the Buddhas, manifesting as his Guru. And due to that, you heard about the Buddha Dharma Sangha, right? So then Buddha is the Dharma, the Buddha, the Dharma. So the Sangha, the, the Sangha is also, the Buddha is a Sangha because he has that true cessation, true path in his mind in the most fullest way. Yeah. Then the ultimate Sangha jewel, true cessation, true paths. Yeah, again in the Arya beings. Yeah, and then ultimate refuge again is only the Buddha. It's only in the Buddha's mind. So if Heather, you can show what we call conventional refuge and temporal refuge, like a definition of two things, then you get a little bit better picture. I hope if you can find it. Okay, there. Okay, so this is the conventional refuge, that which is not the final refuge. and which has not completed that traversing of the path in actuality. So it's a temporal refuge. The ultimate refuge is a refuge that has completed the traversing of the path in actuality. So that's, in the Buddha's mind. The Buddha having achieved the four or three or two bodies, the Dharmakaya, Rupakaya, they can be divided into different aspects. And then having the true cessations, true paths, real Dharma, in having traversed the path completely. Yeah, so nothing left, no remainder left of afflictions or imprints or seeds, completely traverse the path. And then because of that, because of having that in his mind, it becomes the ultimate Sangha jewel, so Sangha refuge for us. And then the other one, maybe the three, have you got the vertical column of the three refuges of Buddha Dharmas? So each of these have their definitions. What's an actual Buddha sublime one? What's the actual Dharma sublime one? What's the actual Sangha sublime one? See, here we have it, So the Buddha, the first one, is a final object of refuge that possesses all the 8 excellent qualities. So we won't have time to go into all the 8, but they're listed next to it. What's the Dharma? What's a real Dharma refuge? A truth of the completely pure class in an area's continuum that possesses any of the 8 excellent qualities, inconceivable and so forth. So basically, the beginning of the Arya being, having seen emptiness directly for the first time. That is the beginning of an Arya being. So whether you're a Bodhisattva or in the lesser vehicle path, you start to have a Sangha, a real Dharma protection there happens. And the Sangha jewel, the third box down there, is an Arya person, who possesses any of the eight excellent qualities of knowledge and freedom. So again, beginning what we call the true cessations, true path. Anyone who has that for the first time becomes what we call the actual Sangha jewel. So good to know. When we actually take refuge, this is why we're taking refuge in Sang, Ye, Chu, Dang, Sugi, So, the Sangha. So when you put your mind toward that, take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and the Sangha until I'm enlightened. Why? Because those are our real refuge objects. They're the ones that won't deceive us. Because of course we can have sometimes we have our Sangha, we call it Sangha, our brothers and sisters in the Dharma. But you see, sometimes they're a bit like us. They also go up and down, right? Sometimes they help us, sometimes they don't help us. Sometimes we need help, and they're probably worse off than us, so they can't help us, right? So they're not sometimes really valid basis of refuge. Of course, normally we use that word Sangha, but these are the real Sangha jewels, are the ones who've got that valid direct perception of emptiness, started to break down the afflictions really from the root. Those are really great beings. Okay, and the final chart, which my little Mickey Mouse handwriting, I hope you can read. Then you get a little bit of, there we go. The conventional sublime one, or conventional jewel, and the ultimate sublime or ultimate jewel. So you see the Buddha, the two form bodies, and the two Dharmakayas, they're all actual ultimate refuge objects for us. All the different forms Buddha came, all the wisdom minds of all the Buddhas, whichever being has achieved enlightenment, that's our refuge objects. And whatever forms they're taking, Nirmanakaya, Sambhogakaya, become ultimate refuge objects. Okay. Then the Dharma. So of course, a conventional sublime Dharma is normally referred to, we call them as texts. So we have to be careful of our texts. We wrap them up in brocade and cloth. We don't put them on the floor. We put them high up, etc. But the ultimate sublime one Dharma are the true cessations, the stopping of all the, not all the stopping of, the beginning of the stopping of the afflictions and their seeds, the true path, the wisdom that realizes emptiness, that begins to cut that. Yeah? And but see, because on the path, what we call the third path, the path of seeing, that's when it begins, the actual direct perception. We call it path of seeing, because that's when we see emptiness directly for the first time. Yeah, that's when somebody becomes an Arya being. That's when somebody has Arya, true cessation, true path. But the ultimate refuge is in the Buddha's mind. The true cessation, the true path in the Buddha's mind. Okay. Then the Sangha. So the conventional sublime one of the Sangha, any Arya being, yeah, who has the true cessation, true path. So in the Bodhisattva path, it also now includes those who have bodhicitta. Yeah, the bodhicitta mind. With that, because now they've achieved wisdom realizing emptiness directly. So actually, you may have heard of conventional bodhicitta and ultimate bodhicitta. So this now it's a bit misleading, but the name we give for the wisdom realizing emptiness directly for the first time, conjoined with bodhicitta in the bodhisattva's mind, we call that mind realizing emptiness ultimate bodhicitta. Yeah? So that's what we call ultimate bodhicitta. Conventional bodhicitta is what we normally call the six perfections, the six cause, one effect, leading up to the mind of enlightenment, wishing to attain enlightenment for others. That's the conventional bodhicitta. The ultimate bodhicitta is actually a wisdom mind, but it's conjoined. Yeah, it's flavored with bodhicitta. That's the difference. The lesser vehicle practitioners don't have that. You see, they just have the wisdom realizing emptiness. So now we have the added flavor to it, and that gives that power, that intensity. Bodhicitta gives that intensity. The mind becomes more strong, more subtle to understand emptiness in with more strength. And that gives the power for the Bodhisattva to go through all his levels of meditation and get rid of not only seeds, but all the imprints are left behind of the seeds, which actually block the Bodhisattva from achieving enlightenment. So he needs to get that. We called it the last time we had it the obstacles to omniscience or obscurations to omniscience. So to get rid of that, the bodhicitta aspect gives that wisdom power. Okay. So those are so we can see the conventional sublime sangha jewel, the ultimate jewel. So ultimate sangha jewel, yeah, that's the true cessation, true path in the Buddha, because he's traversed the path completely. That's the ultimate refuge. Remember, ultimate refuge is that we've gone to the end, traverse the path in actuality. That's only in the Buddha's mind. Okay? But until then, we have refuge still in the Arya beings. Amazing. They realize emptiness. How powerful can that be? They realize this whole idea that got us into samsara, the idea of self, which we believe in completely, like, and like glue, we can't get rid of it. And due to that, all our disturbing emotions come, and due to that, all our actions come, which hurt others, and in the end, lead us into other realms, unfortunate realms. So difficult to imagine, difficult to experience, and that's why we're in this big mess. So we need to put effort into now putting into our lives these antidotes properly. Yeah, of course, again, like I said last time, beginning from where we are at the moment. We may not be in this kind of bodhisattva view, but at least we can have this aspiration towards it, seeing it's possible. Yeah, and thinking our lives are going to be long. We can have many lives to complete our path. The Buddha himself completed his path in many lifetimes. It's possible. Unless we start, it'll never happen. See, unless we put the causes into getting that effect, that result, it'll never happen. So we have to start putting our causes now. That means putting our trust in what the Buddha taught us. Seeing again, how did he do it? He did it. Remember again, great compassion came first. He saw how the beings were suffering. He saw all the beings were suffering due to the misapprehension of the I. He saw that there is a way to get rid of this misapprehension. He saw, that great, realizing emptiness is the tool, is the method to get rid of this misapprehension. But to give that power, you need to engage in all the six perfections, the bodhisattva attitude. So then, with great compassion, he meditated on it, increased it, because just like anything else, the mind can be increased by meditating on it until it became effortless. And it took lives for him to do that, you see, many lives until it became effortless. With that, he had the motivation to meditate on emptiness. So how do I get rid of this ignorance? So with that bodhicitta, with that compassion, he meditated again lifetimes onto realizing selflessness as a person's, selflessness of a phenomenon. And cutting through all the layers of the misapprehension, he achieved that final resultant state. And now we're still following those teachings, right? That's the kindness of the Buddha. He, of course, when you look at his life, not very compassionate at all. He left his wife, left his child, yeah, fled into the forest and hid away in 6 years and following teachers, etc. But all that, now we're still following the teachings. And now we have the methods to leave samsara ourselves. So we have to put the effort ourselves, to actually change our mind, transform our minds. And that we can do. We know we can do. We have the power. We know when we get angry, it burns up inside. And we know we have some control now over anger. We have some control over attachment. It's just a matter of intensity. The more we meditate on impermanence and the shortcomings of this life, the more we meditate on the benefits of patience, it's the easier it becomes. Just like that. Just like everything else in our normal daily life, in our studies and practice, everything else, we just came through practice, came through, if you go back to Shantideva's words of how the mind, the more you accustom your mind to it, the easier it becomes. That way. But we have to have trust in it. So we have to have confidence in it. That comes from experience. So that's when we have to start putting the Dharma that we've heard into our lives. Start to become more patient with more and more objects. Not the things we're already patient with. That's pretty easy, right? But the things that are difficult, put more effort into that. And also with objects we're more attached to, start to put more effort into those to become less attached to them. And the mind gets more familiar. And again, with all the different afflictions, yeah. And then seeing how the benefits come from putting our minds in that way, we say, okay, if I keep doing it, so of course we're thinking, well, way ahead in the lives, I can achieve exactly the Buddha achieved. That's what he did, basically. He didn't drop out of the sky, Although in the Mahayana text we say he was already enlightened. Sometimes his Holiness said, well, maybe we shouldn't think like that because it doesn't give us much hope. But he says, but even at some stage, whichever life he was enlightened in, he still had to have some time being an ordinary being, okay? Just like us. So he did it. We can do it. We just have to give us this kind of kick, a little boost for ourselves. We can do it. We have the power, So we just do it. We think, okay, may take me lifetimes, but this is really a bodhisattva attitude. I really must do it, no matter how many lifetimes it will take. I will do it. That, you start to engage. Beginning with this life slowly, so that doesn't bring you into laziness and well, I got many lives, so I can take it easier. You don't do that either. You do, okay, I got many lives, but I still have to practice. Okay, I'm gonna do as much as I can, starting from this life. That slowly putting in even imprints. See, this is where we look at Rinpoche, so much is imprints, just hearing a name, seeing a statue, saying the words of this Buddha, so that mantra, this imprint, collect as much imprints as you can this life, because life is short. It's like a flash of lightning in the dark night, it's gone. We may look like we're kind of permanent because we're still around, but it's a miracle we're already living this long. It's absolutely a miracle. We think of so many people who passed away, this, that many reasons, many different. So then you think, oh my gosh, yes. Start putting imprints. So if you, so you can't do shine a lot. Okay, you put 5 minutes a day, just 5 minutes every day on your whatever object you've chosen on for your shine. It could be the Buddha image, could be the conventional nature of your mind, it could be the breath. But if you don't put imprints, it will never happen. You see, you start, like that. The same with the other. So the other practices like the six perfections, you have to start gently. You with the ethics, you take what the vow or engagement in the one you can really keep, and you see how beneficial it is, and you see, oh, maybe I can take that one as well. Seeing the benefits of that and the consequences of not following it, of going against that particular activity. Okay, maybe I can keep that one as well. It gives you that strength of mind. Then you engage in that. And then you think, okay, then it's possible, no? If I can change in this life like this, then wow. If I keep going, so then you make this aspirational prayers, to meet the Dharma quickly, like Barbara's doing quite often in next life, very, very early on. And not just meeting it, but having the conditions to practice it. Yeah. And then life after life, you get what we call the precious human rebirth. Precious because you meet the teacher. So again, here the Mahayana teacher giving you all the practices needed for the Mahayana vehicle, and having all the conditions to practice it. And then again, you have another life, and then you're guaranteed. You're just you're you're rolling on basically. There's nowhere else. You can't drop down. You're going. And that saves you from the lower realms. Save you from going into human existences, God realms, which you'll be wasting your life. Of course, they'll be, they come in due to virtue, but the virtue will be wasted quickly, and the karma gets extinguished, and you come back to the lower realms again. So you try and now make aspirational prayers to meet the Dharma early, to practice well in those lives, and then slowly we go on. And that's what protects us. That's our Dharma. That's our Dharma refuge. Yeah, that. So that takes effort, you see. So remember, if some of you've done patience, there's a patience of not retaliating or receive harm. There's patience of accepting suffering when it happens, and there's a patience actually in terms of Dharma context that we need now. Yeah, because some of the topics that we have to study and meditate on are not nice. People don't want to meditate on the lower realms. The people don't want to meditate on emptiness, or even study about what emptiness is very difficult. It can be very difficult. Of course, depends on the merits. You see, when you listen to Lama Zopa Rinpoche, quite often he says, it really depends on your merits. See, even some people have a lot of intellectual knowledge, etc., very sharp and bright. But when they hear about things like karma, rebirths, they can't accept. See, he puts it down to more like merits. There's no merits enough to understand this particular kind of teachings. And even these very sharp people, they can't understand emptiness. There's no self. It might even scare them, you see. Again, there's no merit. Yeah. That's why it's a huge emphasis from Rinpoche's side, for accumulating merit, purifying. That gives us this amazing abundance of energy to go into the path. Yeah. So we need this patience, yeah, to go, to listen, to study, to check. Okay, so if this thing called wisdom, realizing emptiness exists, what the hell is it? What is it? How do I get it? How do I meditate on it? Is it just blanking out, thinking there's nothing? But again, you see some people with merits, they just need to hear a few words, a few sentences, just one or two reasons why there is no self existing like that, and something happens in their mind. They might, of course, they may not have a direct experience that's pretty full on. I mean, they have a lot of merits if that happens, but they have a just understanding. Oh wow, that's it. Yeah, so that. So again, a lot to do with merits, right? So unless we have those merits, we need to accumulate them, and we do that by, of course, um, going to Refuge Buddha Dharma Sangha, because again, that accumulates a lot of merit, because you're saying, please, I trust these teachings. These are the teachings I'm going to use to make my life meaningful. Yeah, I trust in these three sublime ones. Then, of course, So in the next week, we'll go into more now what the precepts actually entail once having become Buddhist. What does it mean? What kind of comportment you should have in terms of physical and mental attitude. We can go into that next week. So it's like making offerings, to the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, because they become again. When you look at karma, that's the valid basis to accumulate merit quickly, right? It's a profit. You gotta, you gotta cash in now. It's the best thing, you know. So you make offerings to Rinpoche, make offerings to all the Sangha and Kopan, make offerings to all the Rinpoche's projects that he's engaged in. Huge amounts of merit. Not you don't have to give a lot. Just give a little bit to each project. Amazing amount of merit is accumulated. Right? Then there's merit by actually doing the actual studies. You actually start to engage in the studies. You reflect on the teachings you take. Whatever, there's so much stuff going on Zoom. I don't know, all these courses all over the world. And you engage in some of the courses. What is the learning that Rinpoche taught? What does it mean, the graduated path? Where is it coming from? Because when you look at it, it came from Atisha's very, very short verses of a lamp on the path. If you look at yourself, it's quite difficult to understand, you see, because they're like little verses, pith-like instructions. Of course, when Atisha came to Tibet, he wrote that. Lama Tsongkhapa elaborated on that, and all the commentaries come on those verses of Atisha's path, and that light on a lamp on the path comes from, the Nalanda University. All the studies that were being done in that university came into these verses, and so Lama Tsongkhapa elaborated on that, and so that's what Rinpoche is trying to encourage us to go into, reflect on, to make our life meaningful. So we have to study it, and studying sometimes takes effort, takes energy, because some of the subjects are a bit difficult to meditate on. So you need that kind of patience in going into studies, and also as you're engaging in your life in that way, you may have to give up certain aspects of your life that you thought were meaningful, which suddenly become meaningless. And that's also a type of patience. You have to give up certain things you'd like to do, because now you see your energy is going this way. Your energy is directed towards this particular way of living. So in terms of ethics, in terms of concentration, in terms of wisdom, the bodhisattva practices, so like this. So as you start to embark on them, it's difficult. Remember, like you're trying to be kind with somebody, and they just rude back, constantly rude back. Why should I keep going to because I'm not getting anything back from this person? That's not practicing, is it? Yeah, because kindness means no matter what that person does from your side, you have no animosity, and you see that person is suffering greatly due to their afflicted minds. Due to that, they're attacking you in some way, or due to your past karma, you're receiving this harm, although from your side you've done nothing. So you have to accept things like this as you practice. So it's part of the Dharma, you see. That's our actual refuge object. Okay. So maybe we can leave it like that for the time being and take some questions. If you've got some questions. Buddha, the Dharma. Where's Charmaine? Has she left us?
Yes, she apologized.
She's gone.
She had to go.
Sorry.
She's doing precepts and she had to prepare her.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, David Lee.
I thank you for the teaching. In terms of refuge, I have a question about the refuge field.
Mm-hmm.
In particular, refuge field versus the merit field.
Yeah, good question. Yeah.
It seems as if the refuge field, we invite the refuge field, but we make offerings to the merit field.
Yeah.
And I've never seen a picture of the merit field. I've seen a picture of the refuge field with the Buddha in the center, the lineage holders, top the Dharmapala, darkest.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. But I've never seen the merit. When you read Pabonka Rinpoche, what he how he describes both of them, he does distinguish, but they're nothing like the picture that I've seen. And I don't know what the difference is, because sometimes it seems like they're the same fields and they're not the same.
Yes, yes, it's a very good. I've been thinking the same thing because we just had it recently in the. We're doing the Lamrim course here in Nalanda, so we're going through the Great Lamrim, and that goes through of course, one aspect, of course, the four greatnesses of Nene, going through the Guru devotion. Then it goes through the topic of meditation, the meditation session, and in that is coming up, the refuge merit field and the refuge field and the merit field, and so the Geshe, the Geshe he was teaching was an English Geshe actually. He studied in Dharamsala. He finished the program in Dharamsala. So he was saying something like, they basically the beings are the same, but the refuge field, your sole purpose is to visualize it, to have them in front, to generate refuge and bodhicitta. Yeah. Then you absorb them. So of course, sometimes it says the whole refuge field dissolves into light. Dissolves into you between your eyebrows, then you now visualize a new field called the merit field, and that's now for accumulating merit. But in fact, they're basically the same beings. So I couldn't see any difference between the beings. It's just two different functions. So I don't see why you can't offer and pay the 7 limbs to the refuge field and becomes a refuge merit field. Somehow there's two distinctions. I haven't quite figured it out. But it seems like it's two functions, but the beings are the same. So, like for example, here in our tradition, we would, like for example, the Lama Chopa, if you did like the Guru Puja, it starts off normally with the Buddha refuge field. So here you would imagine a huge throne. On that throne, on the middle is another throne. Around the 4 directions, like behind, 2 sides, in front, are 4 smaller thrones. Okay, so the Buddha is on the middle one. Around, so in the front, the smaller throne is all your gurus, your root gurus. Yeah? On either side, to the right of the Buddha is Maitreya. On the left is Manjushri, and seated around those thrones are like what we call the lineage lamas of the extensive lineage. The lineage lamas of the profound view around Manjushri, extensive lineage around Maitreya. It's very similar to what you have in the Lama Chopa merit field, but it's just one big throne, one flat throne, 4 thrones on top. Middle throne's a bit bigger, so Shakyamuni Buddha. Behind is the tantric, the essence of tantric guru Vajradhara, blue in color, holding a consort. Okay, and around him also all the lineage lamas with experiential lineage, it's called, I think. And then around the Buddha's throne, like so, on that big throne, around the Buddha's throne, are what we call now the main tantric deities, Hayashvaka Tantra, different classes of Tantra around that, in circles around the throne. Then the other, for example, the medicine Buddhas, Taras, and then slowly coming out to the 6 Arahants, the 35 Buddhas, like this. 35 Buddhas which do prostration to, 35 Buddhas, 16 Arahants, and then Dharma protectors, all on that very, very big throne, like that. Then we take refuge because you see them all in the nature of enlightened beings. So even the Arahants, actually, we see, of course, they have the aspect of what we call having achieved individual liberation, but we see them as emanations of Buddha, because some beings are in that attitude of only wishing for solitary liberation. He manifests the Arahants to help those beings. You see, so we see even the Arahants, they include in the merit field, but they're like they're kind of Buddha emanations. Even the Dharmapalas, even the Dharma protectors. Of course, Dharma protectors, they are ones who are enlightened, and ones are not fully enlightened. So those we don't put on the throne. We only put the fully enlightened Dharma protectors. So that's what I've seen as one way of visualizing the refuge field. Okay. So
Well,
that's
excuse me.
yeah, no. So there's So that's the beginning of Lama Chopa. That's combined with what we call the Jojo practice. So then that visualization dissolves into light. You take refuge, bodhicitta, it dissolves into light, dissolves into you. You can become completely blessed. You can do the four measurables. Yeah, single wonderful beings we're free of suffering, have wonderful all beings that happen as a cause of happiness, etc. And then you start to visualize the merit field. So the Lama Chopa is this, this beautiful tree coming from this ocean of milk. On that tree is this lotus in tears, like that, and then from Lama Tsongkhapa. So here, the merit field, we have Lama Tsongkhapa. Yeah, you can visualize at the size of your hand. At his heart, Shakyamuni Buddha. At his heart is the Guru Vajradhara, blue in aspect, the tantric essence of tantric Buddhas. Okay, so we have these three beings, and then from Lama Tsongkhapa's heart, these light rays go out. To the right, becomes Maitreya, all the extensive lineage. The left becomes Manjushri, the profound lineage. Light rays go behind him, becomes Vajradhara and all the lineage lamas. So that's where you see this whole column of Mahasiddhas and yogis. Yeah. Then front, light rays go out and it becomes your gurus or your gurus. Then, on the tiers of lotuses, the first one is high yoga tantra deities, then the other class of tantra deities, go around, and 35 Buddhas, the 16 Arhants, Dharma protectors, like that. Then we offer them the 7 limbs, in a very extensive form, of course, in the Lama Chopa. Many for prostrations, many verses for prostration. For the offering, there's many verses for offering. Like that. Yeah, but I don't. Yeah, to really tell you the truth, I can't. That's how you visualize the objects. Then why they're differentiated, I'm not quite sure. I'm still in doubt actually myself, because I don't see why you can't put the refuge field and then accumulate merit by doing the prostrations, offering. Should be the same, but somehow you have to dissolve it and put a new one.
Well, in terms of the lineage holders, given that there are only 12 on the representations I've seen, it looks like the bottom 3 would be Tsongkhapa and his 2 disciples. I'm just, from what I can see with their hand gestures and the hats, 9 above them, I can't make out. Would you?
Oh, right. Okay.
9 above. Only 12 in the. I don't know who all 12 are to begin with. I'm just guessing. Right.
Yeah, I'm not sure who they all maybe. I think it's in the back of I think, is it Liberation of Palm Your Hand? I think the newest version has one, no? At the back. They have all the descriptions.
I have the one, Michael Richards. I don't have the other.
I have a look because I think I saw one where they have the picture and then have a number for each, each being, and there's a name for each one. But again, some depends. Like I was reading recently, Geshe Nawan Dagi was the first teacher in Dharamsala in the Tibetan library. So he taught many of our older FPMT's Sangha and of Lama Yeshe's Lama Zopa's disciples, because he was one of the first teachers in the Tibetan library. So he's got a very nice commentary on the Lama Chopa. So as he describes this, he says, of course, there's this, the Maitreya has this many beings around him, this many, and of course you can then visualize more depending on the Indian yogis who are not sometimes put into the paintings of the merit field. So he says you can now, which Indian yogis from the Nalanda University Monastery you want to visualize around them, you can put them there. You can put them next to the profound lineage of this. So he adds more up to, depending on how you feel this. But the exact numbers, I don't know. I myself don't know. I have hard enough trouble trying to visualize Lama Tsongkhapa and the Buddha in the heart. It's already quite difficult for me. But yeah, it's good. It's good to find out. Maybe ask my geshe here as well, why they're specifically different fields of merit and refuge.
Thank you.
Yeah, Barbara.
I hear you use the term Dharma protectors,
Mhm.
and I'm not sure of that term. How are they different, or how are they the same as the other beings that you mentioned?
So some of these, let's see. So Buddha had to take many aspects to subdue us, okay? Sometimes very peaceful aspects, sometimes very wrathful aspects, and sometimes aspects to kind of protect the Dharma. So some of these Dharma protectors can be seen by like specific manifestations of Buddha's mind, taking an aspect to help beings like us who are trying to practice. So trying to, like we're trying to safeguard our ethics, we're trying to practice morality, trying to do retreat, trying to do studies. So by actually supplicating, making requests to these Dharma protectors, there was a specific function of actually trying to help us. They're trying to clear away obstacles for us. Yeah. For example, some of the beings that were around in Tibet when Buddhism was first being introduced were so like malignant or wrath, or kind of so much against Dharma. They were trying to actually destroy the Dharma. So one of the first teachers that went from Nalanda Monastery, one of the monks called Sangharakshita, he said the ways, methods he has isn't strong enough to subdue these spirits. They're so powerful. So he advised the king at that time to invite a great tantric adept called Padmasambhava to come and subdue these beings. So Padmasambhava came to Tibet, and that time he subdued a lot of these spirits, and they became what we call the Dharma. Some of them became Dharma protectors, and eventually reached enlightenment, of course, themselves. So some of them could also be in this kind of what we take refuge in, because they're enlightened, but they're still in the function of protecting, helping us. So uh, in our tradition, with a lot of prayers, supplications to these particular beings, because they help us in our path to practice. Yeah, so they have specific functions for helping us. So some are more wrathful than others. Some, and depending on our kind of particular karma, we have a particular affinity with them, a particular Dharma protector. So, say a Lama might know that this one is good for you and ask you to practice this particular one. So that's how it works. But they're all seen as actual enlightened beings. But some may be not fully enlightened, so they could be Arya Sangha, so they have true cessations, true paths, but they haven't finished all their path in terms of all the imprints being taken away. But they still are refuge objects.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Aida, Victor, Charlie. Victor, there's a great painting behind you. What is it? Is it one of yours?
The one, the abstract one right behind, that's my painting.
Yeah.
And the one next to it is a friend of mine who did that.
Very nice. Very nice.
Thank you, thank you. I do have a terminology I've never heard before. And I'm not sure what it means. You use the word, is it transient collection or
Yes. Okay, good question. Okay, so it's called a view of the transitory collection. The transitory collection is this stuff here. Our body, so which is disintegrating, it's a form. It's taken through karma and afflictions. So due to that, contaminated form, it's disintegrating, impermanent by nature, suffering by nature. And then with the form comes, mind. So mind can be broken into like four kind of main components. So why did Buddha do that? Because we call it normally the five aggregates, because normally these are the five that we associate with as being kind of me, or in a kind of very gross level. Some people say me, oh, it's me, a form. Of course it's not. We know it's not because we're changing. It can't be me because I'm not the same as when I was 5 years old, right? So it's not me, but somehow this instinct idea is me is form. Then sometimes it's like feeling. Yes, that's one. It's also mind, but feeling is mind. So sometimes I feel good, I feel happy, I feel bad. Yeah, it's like me, I feel. We have the association of me being feeling. Then also sometimes we think our consciousness, like seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. Yeah, I am doing that. I feel, I see. It's just like again this idea of me. Yeah? And then there's what we call discrimination. So it's a mind that says, good, bad. We can discriminate. The mind discriminates between a square shape, a round shape. We can. So again, we had the idea of that's me doing that. Me, I am discriminating. Then on the fourth type is what we call everything else. All the other different types of mind, anger, attachment, pleasure, all the different mental factors go into that pool. We call it compositional factors. So these five, all transitory by nature. They're all impermanent. Mind is impermanent, body is impermanent. So what we call the view of the transitory collection is a view that sees these, which are impermanent. Based on this, there is a sense of I, me, which is okay. That's what we call a merely labeled, like Rinpoche often says, a merely labeled I, a conventional I, which kind of exists conventionally. Yeah. But the problem is this view of the transitory collection, observing that mere I, yeah, due to past ignorance of or the past views of grasping at inherent or true existence, due to imprints. Now that I, that mere I, that the mind actually labeled, appears back as truly findable, inherently there, separate from the body and mind. Yeah. So that's what we call the view of the transitory collections. It's not actually just, it's not like a view just looking at the impermanent body and nature. It's looking at it, seeing there's an I due to that basis, and then on top grasping at it as being me, permanent, kind of independent of the body and mind. Sometimes it feels like it's in the body and mind. Sometimes it's completely separate from the body and mind. So it's just kind of inherent me. And with that, idea of me comes a notion of mine, like something which is belonging to me. It's not the phenomena itself so much, but the idea of something belonging to me. And because of this idea of I and mine, there's a view of others, and there's kind of like completely separate. Okay? Kind of this duality forms. Due to that, there's aversion, attachment, all these other afflictions come, all the spectrum of afflictions come up.
You want to get rid of that. You
want to get rid of it. That's our main enemy, number one. If you want to, send in the special forces, that's the one we have to go and get. It's really the main culprit. Yeah, that's what you focus on. Who's that being? But the thing is, it's very hard because we're so accustomed to it. It scares us to look at it properly. It scares the hell out of us. So we don't want to look at it. So we do all the other nice virtuous things. We're kind, we're gentle, we're patient. And basically, even some of the virtue we collect can be with the view of me. I'm being so generous. Look at me. I'm so pure. Can't everybody see how kind I am, how virtuous I am? So again, with that comes the idea of me. It's very subtle, you see, but it comes up. So it's very hard to see, but we have to sometimes just sit and have a look at what's going on actually. So that's a real Dharma. That's a Dharma work to do. That's our practice. That's where we have to engage in properly.
Thank you.
Okay.
I have a question.
Hello?
Yeah, when I sort of, the thing that resonates around refuge as safe direction, that's something that always speaks to me. And I'm thinking about, I mentioned that my husband died almost a year ago, suddenly, out of nowhere, very healthy, and just had a brainstem stroke. And so at the time I was brought to my knees by that, and I just did what I was told. Geshe Sherab gave me prayers to do, and I know that people around me were lighting candles and saying prayers. And I know that having that place to put my grief that helped me tremendously, and the lessons that I learned, the transformation that's taken place over the last 11 months have helped me on my path. But I reflect on, as I was saying so earnestly, prayers for hours and hours a day. I knew what it was doing for me, but I don't know what, I still am not sure what that was doing for my husband.
Yeah. Okay, good question. Yes. So all these prayers, practice, etc. When we do, which prayers you're doing, but of course, any prayer, especially when it's combined with bodhicitta, hopefully bodhicitta, thinking of him, where he is now. So you see, when we generate these minds, bodhicitta, what's that? It's a mind wishing to achieve enlightenment, to benefit others. It's an amazing, virtuous mind. That's when you look at come to the bodhicitta chapter, it first looks at the benefits of it. So this virtue accumulated because of the amount of beings you're trying to generate it to I wish to attain enlightenment. It's amazing, what we look at enlightenment is, the Dharmakaya, all the different bodies the Buddha achieved, this wisdom, omniscient mind. Why? To benefit all beings. All beings are limitless. So the virtue accumulated is incredible. And that virtue, that merit, you see, that accumulated, we can dedicate to that person. All other beings passed away, that's the thing that they need the most. Because they, wherever it was, in between state, maybe, he probably can't accumulate merit in between state. So it's almost, you're helpless, basically. So that's why even here in the monastery, we do a lot of pujas. We have a huge list. Every weekend we do this. I medicine Buddha on Saturday and normally Tara puja on Sunday. And we have people who died, people who are sick, people who have obstacles. So of course, for nuns who died, we pray for their procession rebirth or rebirth in the Pure Land, whatever's best for them to practice. And so that merit all the monks create by, for example, we generate refuge, then bodhicitta. Then we actually say particular names of the Buddhas. So these names of Buddhas, for us, it's how does it work? Why does a name for Buddha have to accumulate merit? Because these beings, when they were bodhisattvas before, they said, also when they were practicing on certain levels apart, their prayers come true, you see. So they said, whatever being wants this, this, and this to happen, or, may it come about due to reciting my name. It sounds a bit egotistical, but it's not. It's just that by the power of my virtue, the power of carrying this name, may I, when I achieve Buddhahood, may by reciting my name, all these wishes come about. So due to that prayer, this comes about. It's a dependent origination, right? So then we, here as monks, we've taken our vows of ethics and whatever, and then we generate refuge, bodhicitta, again a powerful mind. Then again, more powerful mind, we start to recite the names of the Buddhas, you see, or we meditate on Tara, see. So again, to meditate on Tara, for example, because it's kind of a high sugar practice that we do here, it comes from emptiness. Tara emerges from Dharmakaya. That's amazing. We have to meditate on emptiness. That's another lot of merit we heap up, the merit accumulated from the wisdom side. So that, now the merit we dedicate to all these beings who are in the in-between state because they're lost. They cannot accumulate merit. They don't know where they are. They've lost, kind of almost like delirious with fear. So it's merit dedicated to others. See, and that helps them. It may not completely change their karma, but it can influence what kind of rebirth that projecting karma that was going towards a low rebirth may help to change that, to go another course. That's how. Of course, we help ourselves because we generate bodhicitta first, with that great strong compassion mind. So that's where it's the best protection we can have.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you.
But again, when times like that happen, actually, it's a crucial time to see whether we're actually practicing, to really check our refuge. Have we actually taken safe direction? Because we have to put our minds straight back into the Buddha's teachings on impermanence. It can happen anytime, even to our closest people, I see. Somehow it's like a little bit distant, or it happens around us, but not to us. If you meditate on that constantly, the surprise when it happens is not really a surprise because it's kind of, instead of why, it's kind of, well, why not? Karma happens, conditions happen, and it's gone, Like in my own case, my sister passed away 2010, I think, 2010. And very sudden, within 5 minutes she was gone. She was quite healthy, she was 48. And she had this, what they call a heart arrhythmia, which was like the electricity stops, I think. And she was, one morning she felt very bad. The whole night she couldn't sleep. She had back pain, chest pain. She couldn't sleep very well. She was calling her friend to tell her to come and pick up her daughter to take to school. And she couldn't even finish the phone call. Gone, on the floor, 5 minutes. The daughter had no idea. My niece was 10. She had no idea what the mother was doing because my sister was still she was on the floor breathing, panting for breath. And my niece thought she was doing exercise. So going to walk around her, got her breakfast, started eating, and then realized the panting stopped. There was no breath anymore. Then she panicked and she went up, and my sister's boyfriend came down too late. Gone. So of course, I was in shock as well. I got the phone call. I was in the middle of a teaching, I think. Somebody called and got me and said, come down, your sister's on the phone. So I thought, that's unusual. My sister, my second sister, my younger sister, she never calls the monastery. So that's very unusual. So something must have happened. So I was already a bit ready for something. And then she said, my sister was so much in shock, she couldn't talk. It took 5 minutes for her to get the words. They had to sit down, reflect. I said, wow, that's it. She's gone. Nothing I can do. I couldn't say goodbye. All the things she wanted to do. She wanted to come here with her kids to visit the monk. Gone. All the things she was planning to do, all the things she was planning to do with me as well. When like a dream. So I thought, wow, that's how suddenly it can happen. Also to people close to us. So of course, to my parents, it was more of a shock because that's unthinkable. Normally, the parents go before the children, right? But here, my mother was like, that's impossible. How can that be? So because my mum's a very strong Christian, she had doubts. Well, how does God do that to me, my child? She had a family. Why? So she had a bit of a crisis, I think. Yeah, I think it was. I think she came in 1 year later. She came to Toulouse, and the Dalai Lama was teaching actually that year in a big public conference. And strangely enough, I'm not sure if I said this before, but strangely enough, one of the main questions that came up in the public conference from the audience was, how does a parent deal with the loss of the child, of a child? And very strange enough, his Holiness didn't go in the Buddhist way. He went in a very kind of Christian way. He said, well, of course, if you have faith in God, etc., and you really believe and trust that this is the way God's will is, of course, in Christian tradition, God gives life and takes life, and we mustn't question it. It's like the mystical side of God, So you have to wholly trust in that's what's God did what's best. I mean, it's kind of mind blowing, but he said this, and my mum said, "That's really weird. Why does he say that? Because that's exactly what a Christian would kind of think. Actually, you don't. That's how it should be. If she has to pass away at that time in that way, that's it." So my mum was a bit surprised, but she said, "That's very good stuff. Actually, it's really good teaching," and she took it to heart. I think. Yeah, see, that's how it's the mind when we're not really engrossed. See, in called the main teaching Buddha gave us impermanence. We look at it from the beginning to the end. He gave us that in the first teaching in the Four Noble Truths. The last teaching, even before he passed away, he said, "Look at my body, passing away, the impermanence aspect of the body." So it happens any time. You see, the more we meditate on that every day, especially around us, then the mind is more. When it happens, of course it hurts, but it's more stable. You see. And he protects us. He gives us peace. That's that kind of Dharma aspect gives us peace. Right? Okay, 8 o'clock, everybody. I'm going to have to leave you. Thank you. We'll do a quick dedication prayers. So before we dedicate, please let's try and put the Buddha in front of us. We had the presence of the Buddha in front of us. Beautiful, golden in color, smiling at us, having discussed some of the aspects of his teachings. We're trying to put them into our lives. He's so happy with us. Then he comes to the crowns of our heads and dissolves into a very small sphere of golden light. And it slowly descends down to touch the crowns of our heads and dissolves into us. Slowly going down our central channel. So blessing our body, then our speech. It settles it out, our throat chakra, then it goes down to our heart chakra and blesses our mind. and the mind becomes transformed, the potential to receive all the different realizations on the path by us meditating on those specific antidotes for all our afflictions. So then may the precious mind of bodhicitta, which has not risen, arise and grow. May that which has arisen not diminish but increase more and more. And may the wisdom realizing emptiness, that reflection, that wisdom which has not risen, arise and grow. May that which has arisen not diminish but increase more and more. Then due to these merits of these virtuous actions may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. Then for His Holiness, the wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, to the incomparably kind Tenzin Gendun, so beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. And for Lama, Zopa, you who uphold the subdues moral way, who serve as a bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, spreading Manjana's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplish magnificent prayers, honoring the three jewels, saviour of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. Venerable One, to you whose kindness exceeds that of all the conquerors, for those wanderers in far-off places, especially the West, mindful of your loving concern for us, in intentionally descending again into a family of a far distant land, we make this request. O Lama, please, please live long. Okay, everybody, thank you.